Welcome back, lucky top deckers, and welcome to anyone who is new to this channel. I am Kami, semi-professional Magic player and YouTube streamer from Italy. You may not have heard a lot of me, but surely you will in the future, and this is the deck I played in AC10, Jeskai Riddler, Jeskai Control. I was the only one in the field out of 110 players who submitted a deck without Dark Ritual, Chrome Mox, Grief, Bowmasters, the One Ring, the usual suspects. And you may think, why you've done so? Are you out of your mind? What prompted you to submit such an unusual list? And the answer is simple. I really believed, and I still believe, in the power of two cards in this list. In Stifle, which I think is the best blue card in the format, because it's a hate piece against Strip Mine, opposing fetches. You can stifle a Grief trigger, you can stifle a lot of things. And also is a combo piece in this deck, because the second reason is Quantum Riddler. Quantum Riddler, for all intents and purposes, is a one ring that doesn't cost you any life, and it's also a 4/6 flyer. You can stifle the warp trigger so that you can net a 3-mana Quantum Riddler on turn 3. You can mana drain something on your opponent's turn, untap, and play a Quantum Riddler for its full cost. You can also Ephemerate a Quantum Riddler, and Ephemerate is also good with 3 copies of a Solitude. Rounding up, we have a Phlage, and a nice suite of removals in 4 Swords to Plowshares and 2 Prismatic Ending. 3 Tamiyos are additional threats that can be played early, can recur powerful instant and sorceries, and also threatening the ultimate is a real win condition in this deck. This is the main deck configuration that I played in AC10 with a couple exceptions. I have cut the 3rd copy of Hallowed Fountain by adding the 3rd Surveil land, a copy of Elegant Parlor. I already have Thundering Falls and Meticulous Archive, but since we have so many pitch spells, so many spells that can be either cast for cheap or by not paying any mana, such is the case of Solitude and Force of Negation, playing 3 lands that come into play tapped, sometimes it's 4, because of Arena of Glory, sometimes it enters the battlefield tapped, is not that high, that big of a cost as it would in other decks. So that's the first change. The second change is a singleton copy of Dig Through Time. I noticed that sometimes, at times, I needed to go big in the late game. I needed a big draw spell. So I did cut the 4th copy of Solitude. That seemed like an overkill, since we already have 4 Swords to Plowshares and 2 Prismatic Ending. We didn't need the full 4 playset, the 4th copy of Solitude. So that's the other change I made to this list. To the list I presented to the AC10 where I went 3-3, so a neutral record. And as for the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Spell Pierce, 3 Surgical Extractions against graveyard decks. Cast Into the Fire is a versatile answer to both Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring. A couple copies of Disruptor Flute, the 4th Force of Negation, and I added the 4th Phlage, the Titan of Fire's Fury, against Mardu and against other aggressive and mid-range decks. Then we have a copy of a Shokai or Tsokai, the Flickering Talon, which is an alchemy card. It's a bird, a 2/4 for 3, Flying Vigilance Haste. The first line of text doesn't come up all that often. Sometimes it comes up together with Wrath of the Skies, but all our spells cost 1, so discounting them for 1 colors is not that big of a boon. But the second ability sure is good. Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile up to one target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it does flicker one of your creatures. So after you have cast Shokai, in subsequent turns you can go something like Warp Quantum Riddler, Swords your creature, with Flicker Quantum Riddler, so it's like having an additional copy of Ephemerate into the sideboard, which also is a 2/4 flyer. It blocks really well against Mardu, survives Wrath of the Skies for 2 against Mardu, puts pressures on Ajani, so it's a nice card to have access to. And then we have a second copy of Dig Through Time. I chose different artworks to differentiate between the two, the one that's in the main and the one in the side. And this is the deck I went 3 and 3 in the AEC. If you want, I've come up with a video and you can find it here. I recorded all of the matches and I have been granted a special permit from Wizards of the Coast to publish them on YouTube. Unfortunately, the video is in Italian, but my goal in the future is to translate, to re-record it in English, so that my international audience can have access to it too, and not have to use subtitles. And this is also the deck I got to number 125 in the ladder, High Mythic. As of now, I'm standing at 317, so my goal is to go even higher than this. We will do some gameplay in the ladder and see if we can rack up a couple of match wins. So without further ado, let's go to the gameplay. As for the first match, my opponent doesn't have a companion, but this is surely a keepable hand. Maybe my opponent is on Sorry Necro. So that's a double Force of Negation hand. Protects us against Grief plus a Necropotence or Necrodominance turn 1. But my opponent plays Thoughtseize, and I'm inclined to just let it resolve. If my opponent wants to take something like Brainstorm or Mana Drain, that's more than fine to me. Maybe my opponent is on Entomb, Reanimate. We're definitely going Flooded Strand and a pass, because I do want to represent Mana Drain mana up on turn 2. Then if my opponent has something like Strip Mine, we will recalculate. But if my opponent takes away my Source of Plowshares, that might mean one and only one thing. My opponent is about to cast a copy of Psychic Frog, but that just doesn't happen. Maybe it's a Bowmasters. Either way, I'm gonna fetch probably Meticulous Archive tapped, and if my opponent wants to cast Bowmasters, has to do it now. Steam Vents can go to the graveyard. I don't really need it just now. What am I looking at? What am I looking for? Another fetch. Another fetch is fine. So Scalding Tarn and a pass. If my opponent plays Bowmaster, I'm definitely gonna Mana Drain it. My opponent just cycles the Troll of Khazad Doom. That's more than fine to me. And even if my opponent reanimates the Troll, I can still top deck a copy of a Source of Plowshares, or a Solitude, or a Snapcaster Mage to remove it. So Undercity Sewers, my opponent surveils in the end step, and surveils away a Strip Mine. A Strip Mine could have been a good card against me. Could have put a damper on my plans. Thoughtseize again. I'm inclined in Mana Draining this. I don't want to give any more additional informations to my opponent, so I will fetch for a Steam Vents and Mana Drain this. And if my opponent wants to, they can resolve a Bowmasters now, but I didn't have it last turn. It's just a Ponder. Just a Ponder is fine. Then if my opponent plays Reanimates on the Troll, I could even let it resolve. To be fair, I can get unlucky and not find any removal with Brainstorm, but that's not all that probable. So let's Brainstorm first. Brainstorm with Steam Vents. I might need white mana, and I find absolutely nothing. One more Mana Drain, but my opponent has resolved the Tamiyo. So maybe I just need to fetch away everything. Like probably an Elegant Parlor and Hallowed Fountain. Fetch again and then Brainstorm again to find a white removal source or Prismatic Ending for Tamiyo, or I will die to Tamiyo. So, to the card advantage, we will be buried by a Tamiyo card advantage. I can even shuffle away a Force of Negation. That's probably the correct choice. So we'll do this, fetch for a blue-white again. No, blue-red again. No, but Stevens is in the graveyard. We did pitch to the graveyard the second copy of Steam Vents. So we can even get Sacred Foundry. Sacred Foundry adds red, white for Phlage. That's a consideration for this deck. But then we Brainstorm, we cannot leave open Stifle on our opponent's turn if we draw it with Brainstorm. But I think we go for Sacred Foundry untapped and then Brainstorm again. Prismatic Ending, Ephemerate. Ephemerate is not enough, and also we cannot play Tamiyo. So that's kind of worst case scenario. We can put those two to the top. Tarn and Fountain and pass, but that's just a weak turn. So our goal is to force something. If my opponent plays Brainstorm, are we forcing Brainstorm? Probably not. If Tamiyo flips, it's fine. Reanimate on Troll. We do need to force this now. We just don't have any removal. So this gets forced. My opponent cracks a clue. Now, please reanimate again. Reanimate again will be, yeah, kind of a bad thing to happen. And a top land and a pass. Now we can fetch away something. Fetch away the Hallowed Fountain and then go Tamiyo, Riddler, Ephemerate. Island, Tamiyo, Riddler, Ephemerate. At the very least, we're drawing a lot of cards. And Tamiyo is flipping. But my opponent is pushing the Tamiyo. But that's totally fine. That's totally fine by me. We're not gonna ephemerate the Tamiyo. We're gonna ephemerate Quantum Riddler. And we're just in the market for a Source Pusher. We do have Solitude. So we can pitch Ephemerate to Solitude, but that's not the answer. We definitely want to Ephemerate Riddler. If my opponent wants to flip Tamiyo next turn, that's totally fine by me. We will fetch for a basic with the Arid Mesa and hardcast Solitude on Troll of Khazad-dûm. My opponent attacks, that's totally fine. Block, my opponent cracks in response to Tamiyo flips. So I don't have the chance to remove it. I fall down to 6, Tamiyo flips. My opponent doesn't have a removal for the Riddler. Riddler can attack Tamiyo down to 1 loyalty. So we're not in a bad shape. The only thing we need to do is not to ephemerate the Riddler, so we decline the ephemerate. I don't really need another card. And then we can attack Tamiyo for 3. So Tamiyo next turn gets removed by Quantum Riddler. And then we can play a Mesa and pass. I think we play Solitude now. Does my opponent have Stifle now? We play Solitude now just to play around mana drain, where my opponent might or might not have. So hardcast Solitude, it resolves, my opponent goes back to 13. And now we just need to fade something like Entomb, Reanimate, Atraxa. That would be kinda bad. My opponent just pluses Tamiyo, plays another Tamiyo, plays Hydroponics Architect, plays Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a really good card in this position. Let's hope they don't find something valuable now. So 2 cards need to go to the top, and my opponent can fetch those away. Has my opponent found Entomb, Atraxa, Reanimate? Thoughtseize does nothing. As a matter of fact, Thoughtseize is helping me. Because now I draw double with the Riddler. Yeah, there it is. But now I cannot attack Tamiyo. No, I still can attack Tamiyo with the Riddler. Then I need... my opponent draws 1 more card with Frog. That's fine. First thing first, let's surveil with Thundering Falls. Fountain to the graveyard. And then I think Solitude attacks my opponent. There is value in having my opponent exile 3 cards from their graveyard just to jump the Frog in order for me to not chum block with Solitude. But if they do, they remove 3 cards, and so their treasure crews get worse. So there's that. I think I do attack Tamiyo and Solitude at them. And that's fine. My opponent can block Solitude and pitch a card from their hand with Psychic Frog. And that's what they do. But that's fine. That's also fine. Maybe should not have attacked. But discarding Brazen Borrower is not free. Brazen Borrower is a really good card. So, if I got asked the question, do you want to trade a Solitude on board, an onboard Solitude for a Brazen Borrower out of your opponent's hand, would you? Absolutely yes. The passing of the turn. Psychic Frog is not lethal. If my opponent finds Treasure Cruise, I have Force of Negation at the ready. Actually, any spell that my opponent casts, I will force it. Just to go down to 1 card in my hand. To draw double. Like, Ponder is fine. Ponder gets the Force of Negation. And now my opponent needs Treasure into something else. And if my opponent does, kudos to him. So, do we stay back with the Frog? And probably the answer is yes. We just play Arena of Glory and Witch Enchanter and a pass. Witch Enchanter is a valuable 2/2 for 4 that does nothing else. Pass. The important part is to not let Psychic Frog draw any cards from this position. My opponent fetches for another Surveil. No, the 4th Watery Grave and push for Witch Enchanter. That's totally fine. That push was better served pitched on the Psychic Frog to pump it. I draw 2, there's a Snapcaster Mage, and then my opponent concedes the game. Quantum Riddler is too big to deal with just a Psychic Frog. Now, as for this matchup, I do want to cut some Force of Negation, probably all 3 of them, because my opponent, it is true that my opponent is playing a reanimation package, so it is doing something unfair. But my opponent's deck is mostly fair, so I need to contend with their fair part of the deck first. Their thoughts is Brainstorm, Push, Ponder, Tamiyo, Brazen Borrower part of the deck. And in order to fight it, I can consider Cast into the Fire for the Bowmasters. It's also a nice answer to Brazen Borrower, but it does nothing against Tamiyo and Psychic Frog, which are the 2 biggest threats. I cannot cut Solitudes and Swords Plowshares and Prismatic Endings. Usually my side is like 1 Witch Enchanter less, now a couple of Force of Negations. Snapcaster Mage is also kinda slow. We add a couple of Surgical Extraction. We do want to attack the reanimation package, but we don't want to go overboard with the 3rd Surgical, additional Force of Negation. As a matter of fact, I am cutting Force of Negation. I don't want Disruptor Flute, I don't want Shokai, because it matches really poorly against Tamiyo and Psychic Frog, but I do want the 2nd copy of Dig Through Time, because this match could go long, so usually my cut is either a copy of Stifle or Ephemerate, but I want to cut 1 Ephemerate, because Stifle might be good against a Resolved Atraxa. If my opponent goes into Reanimate Atraxa on turn 2, I can Stifle the trigger and then Sword Splasher the Atraxa. So this is my configuration. I still want the Phlages. Phlage is the way I can outgrind my opponent if the game goes long. Even if my opponent casts 1 copy of Treasure Cruise, usually Phlage, Escape Phlage and Dig Through Time is enough to win the game, despite 1 copy of Treasure Cruise and sometimes even 2. This hand cannot be kept since we don't have any blue mana. I do recognize that Surgical Extraction, so if my opponent goes for a fast reanimate, there's that, but I cannot keep a hand without blue against a deck with the Strip Mine. So this is easy, a keep. We can put away a Prismatic Ending. Source of Plowshares is better than Prismatic Ending, except if my opponent goes turn 1 Tamiyo, protected by Force of Negation or a Spell Pierce and then Brainstorms and flips a Tamiyo, but that seems a bit of a stretch. So Prismatic Ending goes to the bottom. I do need lands against a Strip Mine deck. My opponent goes under City Sewers, that's totally fine. Bowmasters go to the graveyard. I can play something like Steam Vents Pass, but Steam Vents doesn't cast Source Plowshares. I would also like to save my fetch for after I cast Brainstorm. I can just go Island Go, but I don't wanna hide away the island to the Brainstorm, because Island doesn't really cast Phlage or Escape Phlage, so we'll just go Steam Vents Pass. 2 damages should not be the end of the world, and if my opponent plays Psychic Frog, I will Brainstorm. Thoughtseize is fine, I can Brainstorm in response and hide some cards from my opponent. What do I want to hide? Probably Mana Drain and Riddler. So something like this. Go. You can take away my swords if you want. But then, if my opponent plays Psychic Frog next turn and I Mana Drain the Frog, I can cast Riddler turn 3. And that would be a big game. So Island at a pass. I don't want to shuffle away the Riddler on top. Let's see what my opponent does. My opponent is stuck on mana, only has 1 mana, and passes the turn. That's more than fine to me. I can go Riddler and Stifle, but there's also value in waiting. I can just go Sacred Foundry at the pass. If my opponent fetches Entomb is more than fine. Entomb, you can Entomb and Reanimate now. It's only ever bad if my opponent goes Grief and Reanimate. And my opponent just Entombs Grief. If my opponent reanimates Grief, it's not the end of the world. But this is definitely a Mana Drain situation. So I can hardcast Quantum Riddler. I will slam Riddler turn 4, as a matter of fact. Yes, absolutely. We just need to fetch the right land, which probably is just Hallowed Fountain. So Fountain, Riddler for 5. And a passing of the turn with Solitude up. If we draw a white pitch, but we did not, my opponent still concedes. Because we have a Quantum Riddler, my opponent has nothing. So, Mythic 279, we are 29 position away from achieving top 250 and being granted access to the qualifier weekend without passing through the play-ins. Let's keep playing. Let's go to the next. We play first, second match. After that match, I have played against Eldrazi and got a really nice win. Unfortunately, I forgot to press the record button. So we are here at mythic number 252 against my opponent, who doesn't play any commander. Could be anything. When in doubt, we just keep this hand. It might be problematic, but we have Stifle to protect ourselves from Strip Mine, just in case my opponent is playing Mono Black or Golgari, and goes turn 1 fetch, and maybe try and cast Dark Ritual or Deathress Shaman. There's the Deathress Shaman. We don't have to have a removal for this. I can wait and Brainstorm in my turn. That's probably what I am supposed to do. Yeah, because I am not seeing enough cards. The only downside to this is if we need 2 mana for some reason next turn. I have to Brainstorm and Stifle, but we're putting away one of those 2 duels, either Sacred Foundry or Elegant Parlor, regardless, just in case we find a fetch land. But here's Hallowed Fountain. We Brainstorm to find a white removal to Deathress Shaman. I don't really want to Solitude pitch the Deathrite. Here's another Solitude. We can put away Parlor and Foundry and keep both Stifles. Maybe that's a little bit of an overkill. We can put back Sacred Foundry and Stifle and keep the Parlor. Yeah, that's a little better. So we go Strand and a passing of the turn. Yeah, you can have your Deathress Shaman. You still need to play a fetch first, because I'm not fetching up until your end step to not provide Shaman any further. My opponent plays Ancient Tomb and goes for Demonic Tutor. That's fine-ish to me. It will get a 1 ring. And unfortunately, against Golgari, I don't have many answers to a resolved ring game 1. We need to go to game 2, and I will definitely board in both Disruptor Flutes and Cast into the Fire, also to attack the Orcish Bowmasters, which may pose a real threat. Past attackers, their threat attacks for 1, and then we can fetch for a Thundering Falls and try to find something good. And Quantum Riddler definitely is something good. Granted, my opponent will resolve a ring, and there's nothing I can do to prevent it. Even if I cast Solitude on the Death Shaman, my opponent can still go land ring. But a Riddler, at the very least, is a clock. is a clock on my opponent. Granted, the 1 ring always beats a resolved Quantum Riddler, even if my opponent has an Ancient Tomb is at 16. We do have Solitude, so if my opponent plays a Shield, we need to go to full control, to hold full control, in order for this trick to resolve. Then we go Fountain, draw with the Riddler, leaving Hallowed Fountain mana up, just in case we find Ephemerate. This resolves. We can also Stifle some ring triggers. That's one way usually to defeat a resolved ring, but it's not that easy. It doesn't come up all that often. Usually game 1 a resolved ring spells doom, and it's unavoidable. We could Solitude for Shaman just in case my opponent doesn't have a 4th mana source, but that seems a little bit sketchy. I mean, it could be good. But my opponent has Chrome Moxes and just in general enough mana sources to cast a 1 ring. Yeah, another Ancient Tomb. So that's totally not the case. Then what does my opponent do? Definitely the 1 ring. That's what my opponent Demonic Tutor for. I mean, I do have Dig Through Time. We can find Phlages with this, so it's not the end of the world. And we definitely will Snapcaster Stifle something next turn. My opponent has Shaman open though, so it will be tricky to cast something with Snapcaster. Yeah, Mox resolves. Like, if now my opponent casts something like a Barrogoyf, I will definitely need to exile that. Dark Ritual, for Shieldred, and then draw with the ring. Yeah, and then draw with the ring. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. You can have a Shieldred, and then draw with the ring, and then we exile Shieldred, pitching Solitude. Glad I waited. My opponent assembled the combo ring Shieldred. We're not winning yet. We're still not winning, but maybe something really strange happen. I want to discard cards from my hand. My opponent can exile something with Shaman and play something like another Shaman. This is the turn to draw a Phlage. Phlage will be a really good draw now to remove the Shaman. Mostly to unlock this Snapcaster Mage. Grief, I can play Upkeep, Snapcaster and Brainstorm, because this Grief will take away Dig Through Time, if I had to guess. So Upkeep Snapcaster just to draw extra cards with the Riddler, because Brainstorm will draw 4 cards in my Upkeep, since I will go down just to this Singleton Elegant Parlor in my hand. So Grief takes away Snapcaster. So now I can dig in my Upkeep to draw twice. Is that interesting enough? My opponent can exile something with Shaman. Also, playing Dig Through Time removes this Flooded Strand from my graveyard. So we remove fodder from the Deathrite Shaman's hands. So I think that's the correct play. That's definitely the correct play. So everything gets exiled. Oh, but definitely I will not draw 2 with this Dig Through Time. So I could have waited, actually. I could have waited to draw first. But this is still fine. Ephemerate, Witch Enchanter, Sacred Foundry. Am I supposed to just get this Ephemerate and Ephemerate Riddler to draw more? Or I can get Ephemerate and Riddler and play that next turn and draw a lot of cards. But I need answers. I also need a clock. I can get a Riddler and Arena of Glory and play an hasty Riddler next turn. That's also a possibility. That's 8 damage coming straight to my opponent's face. That has to mean something. I mean, Arena of Glory is probably one way to beat the ring. If my opponent doesn't find another Shieldred. And if my opponent does find another Shieldred, we're probably toast regardless. So no attacks and the passing with the turn. My opponent falls down to 15. My opponent has double Ancient Tomb. So if my opponent doesn't find a Shieldred or a Barrogoyf, we can win this game. Which seems kinda unreal. My opponent is taking 8 damages. No, it's not taking 8 damages anymore. Because this Riddler gets discarded, but that's fine. We can still top deck Phlage. Phlage is still a really good card in this position. And my opponent has double Ancient Tomb, so it's taking a lot of pain to cast those spells. But definitely Grief was a nice draw for the turn. Not the best draw, so we faded something even worse for a turn. Even Stifle will be good now. Yeah, but you need to discard Quantum Riddler. That's another 4 damages coming straight to your face. So Arena of Glory, attack for 4, play Tamiyo, pass with art, cast Force. If my opponent wants to play another ring, not to die from this. We need to dodge 1 Shieldred this turn. If my opponent doesn't draw Shieldred this turn, we can win. And my opponent draws first. That's phenomenal. Because now my opponent needs Grief plus another ring. Or we win. We're winning on board. There's no way for my opponent to remove a Riddler main deck. Especially since I have Tamiyo. My opponent can have a Shieldred Edict. And granted, Tamiyo will flip in my draw step since Riddler will draw 2. In my draw step since I have 1 card in hand. So my opponent can have drawn a Shieldred Edict, wait for Tamiyo to flip, and then cast Shieldred Edict. But there's another ring, and there's a Force for the ring. So that's how you beat a Resolve 1 ring game 1. That's something really impressive. Really impressive for this deck. Now, does my opponent have a Shieldred Edict? Can I have Push plus Shieldred Edict? But that's an unusual card to play main deck. And then I can still rip a removal for a Shaman. It has to be Grief though. No, my opponent doesn't have any of those. If my opponent had a Push for Tamiyo and Edict for a Riddler, my opponent needed to tap the Ancient Tomb. So would have fall to 3 and then would have lost this 1 ring on the upkeep. But then my opponent could have put a stop and exiled something with that Shaman. But that's not the case. So against Golgari, the main threat is the 1 ring. So we need to address that with a couple Disruptor Flutes and cast into the fire. I don't want to go overboard with Force of Negation, mostly because this is a fair matchup, so I don't want Spell Pierce. Dig Through Time is my go-to to fight discard spells, Thoughtseize and Grief. My hand gets stripped away and I still have a Dig Through Time left. So it's a really powerful top deck in any spot of the game. We can put another Phlage. My opponent can bring in Surgicals and weaken all of my Phlages. I think 3 Phlages is more than enough. Swords to Plowshares and Solitude are probably the best cards, especially Swords to Plowshares against Golgari. We need to fight Weighted Zonguard also. We can bring in Surgical Extraction, like just 1 Surgical Extraction. It's good against Reanimate. It's good against Strip Mine if an opponent wants to recurve it. I do not want Wrath of the Skies because my opponent has a lot of high mana value creatures, so Wrath of the Sky is just too slow against Riff, against Sheoldred, against Balroggoyf at times. What do we cut? Maybe one copy of Force of Negation, one Snapcaster Mage since my opponent is playing Deathrite Shamans, and probably both Ephemerates. Since Ephemerates gets worse the more discard my opponent has. My opponent has a lot of discard. And then we can take away a Solitude. And that's another card that gets worse against this card. Since my opponent will either discard Solitude or the white pitch for Solitude. So I'm not able to play the combo. If that makes any sense. So is this card fine? Is this hand fine? I think so. This hand is good against anything that's not called the One Ring. But we have answers to it. So let's hope to find those in the future. My opponent fetches over then Catacombs. Sure, that resolves. If my opponent plays turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, we will definitely instantly Swords to Plowshares it. But my opponent goes Thoughtseize. That's more than fine to me. If my opponent is smart, my opponent is taking this Quantum Riddler for sure. And my opponent can have Reanimate. So that could be problematic. If not for the fact that we have 2 Swords to Plowshares in hand. So that's not a suitable line. And my opponent is surgical in my Quantum Riddlers. That seemed like the case. My turn, I draw, and then you surgical the Riddlers. Am I supposed to just play Scalding Tarn? I think so. I'm not Swords to Plowsharing anything this turn. Unless my opponent goes Dothy, Voidwalker, which is a unusual side in against Jeskai. Mostly to fight Phlage, usually. It's just a good card, it's not a specific hate piece. The Dothy, Voidwalker, Dark Ritual, that's more than fine. And then Necropotence, Orcish Bowmasters, why? Why did you feel the need to ritual out a main phase Orcish Bowmasters? That makes no sense. Are you forcing me to draw and then reanimate on the Riddler? Sure. But you still have 2 cards left in hand, so you only get to draw 1. Sure. Riddler results. You have 3 cards in hand now. And you are 1 Dark Ritual down. So end of turn we fetch probably another white source, like a Meticulous Archive. We're not in need of any red mana as of now. I can top the Cast into the Fire for the Bowmasters. So maybe that's why I want Thundering Falls instead. My opponent can have a Strip Mine for the Hallowed Fountain, but then I have Witch Enchanter. So it's fine then getting this Thundering Falls. Sacred Foundry, Sacred Foundry, Sacred Foundry. What am I searching for? Probably another copy of Quantum Riddler, Dig Through Time. So yeah, Dig Through Time gets better the more card we put to the graveyard. There it is, and there it is. So Fountain, Sword the Riddler now. We can wait, we can wait. There's not any rush. It's not like my opponent is playing Snakeskin Veil on their Quantum Riddler. Maybe this prompts a different play. No, Dark Ritual Ring. But we have Force at the ready. Dark Ritual Sheoldred. Swords to Plowshare. My opponent is trying to overload my removals, but that will not work. that will not work. If that's my opponent's game plan, that will not work. Let's put a stop on the upkeep. We're definitely Swords to Plowsharing this Sheoldred. Do you have a Grief? No. A land and a pass. That could be bad if your opponent plays a Weird Zongar next turn. But we can pitch cast the Solitude. We can also just draw, take the damage, take 3 more damage to Witch Enchanter, but we cannot cast Dig Through Time, so that makes no sense. So Swords to Plowshares, and if I had more cards in my graveyard, that could have been a consideration. So we draw, Tamiyo. Is it better as a creature or is it better as a pitch to Force of Negation? That is the question. I think we still cast Tamiyo. I don't know about this Witch Enchanter though, if we want to play it as a land. I probably do, but I might need a white pitch to Solitude, just in case my opponent plays a with its own guard or a Barrogoyf. So I think we wait just this turn. We have Force and Solitude up. And this is the turn for my opponent to draw something like Dark Ritual or Chrome Mox. Like a lot of fast mana that does nothing against me at this stage of the game. And my opponent just passes the turn. That's more than fine to me. We're still at 13. Prismatic Ending. Prismatic Ending is also a pitch to Solitude. But it's also removal for the Bowmasters, which I am gonna remove at some point in the game. So I think we just make a clue with Tamiyo, exile the Bowmasters, because why not? And then now I play Witch Enchanter. I really do need lands in the future, because it's not unreasonable to just flip Tamiyo next turn by sacrificing 2 clues if I find a land from the top. My opponent plays absolutely nothing, but do we want to try and flip Tamiyo when my opponent can have another copy of Bowmasters? My opponent will almost assuredly have another copy of Bowmasters, to be fair. Am I still attacking? It might be a nice thing to do to stay back with the Tamiyo and just play Steam Vents and a pass with Force up without a pitch and Dig Through Time. I mean, this Dig Through Time should win this game. I don't need to take 2 more damages to Steam Vents. My opponent didn't have the Bowmasters and then pushes my Tamiyo. That's more than fine to me. That's more than fine. We could have flipped the Tamiyo, but I think it's the right thing to do to play around another copy of Bowmasters. So it's fine. At the end of the turn, Dig Through Time, leaving only probably Swords Plowshares, just in case we flip another Tamiyo. Dig will probably find Stifle, Brainstorm, Swords Plowshares, Brainstorm and Swords. Yeah, why not? Why not? Those are 2 really good cards. Then my turn, we untap. Now we can Brainstorm. And if my opponent plays Bowmasters in response, we can Swords it. Parlor and Scalding Tarn, we fetch those away with Flooded Strand. And as you might see, we're fully in control. My opponent needs Grief plus 1 ring to escape from this situation, because it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse and worse for my opponent. Chrome Mox is all yours. By all means, please, Chrome Mox away all of your cards in your hand. And as you might see, unless the Golgari player gets really lucky with their fast mana and fast threats, this is not a good matchup for them. This is a really good matchup for us, because we have all the right tools to control them. Unless they really go fast, like turn 2 Ring, turn 3 Shieldred, and activate, and suddenly you're lost. So Meticulous Archive. Next turn we can hardcast Solitude. We can also just hardcast Riddler, which is probably what I'll do. And if my opponent resolves a ring, we can find a flute. I mean, we have those. And again, we can stifle 1 ring activation. Arena of Glory is fine. So Arena of Glory and the passing of the turn. I could have left Stifle open, just in case my opponent plays Grief. Shieldred is fine, opponent. Shieldred eats probably a Solitude, to have Solitude onto the battlefield. Is that a consideration? Probably yes. No, probably no. No, probably yes. I don't think, unless I top deck something like another Quantum Riddler or a Mana Drain. I'm not using my mana this turn, so it's better to cast the expensive spell rather than the chip spell that is flexible. Here's another Quantum Riddler, so slightly punished by my line, but I think it's still fine. We are totally winning this game, unless another ring comes down like this very turn and somehow I don't find any removal for the ring, which I do have a plenty in my deck. So my turn, we can haste up another Riddler. That's probably what I am supposed to do. So yes, this way, yes. Hasty Riddlers in Timeless. If that makes sense to you, it definitely makes sense to me. So this is match number 2, numero 2, against Golgari midrange. A really nice and clean win that propels us to number 221. Let's go to the next match. Match number 3 on the draw against a Platinum player. I'm not dismissive, I'm really respectful of lower tiered opponents. We do keep this hand. If my opponent is playing an unfair deck, we are kind of underdogs. If my opponent resolves a Necro Enchantment turn 1, there's nothing we can do. But if we get on top with Stifle, then it can become a nice hand. My opponent goes for Steamvents and Faithless Looting, and pitches Bloodgust and Prized Amalgam. So my opponent is reanimating 5 power worth of creatures next turn. The only thing we can do is pass with both Stifle and Swords to Plowshares up. Before I forget, if you like this content, make sure to like this video and subscribe. So this way you can see more of me in the future. We can Stifle the Bloodgust trigger, but I think that's a losing proposition. We just need to Source to Plowshare the Prized Amalgam, or rather Source to Plowshare the Psychic Frog, or we're losing to that too. And then Source to Plowshare the Prized Amalgam and try to contend with the Bloodgust in some way. We can also Sword the Bloodgust and Phlage the Prized Amalgam. That's probably better. First thing first, let's Sword the Psychic Frog. That's the main threat that my opponent is posing to this board. And then we'll go land pass with the intention of a sword in this Bloodgust. Force of Negation is a little late to the party, but it's still good. Just in case my opponent plays, I don't know, Entomb something and then reanimate something else. If my opponent just attacks, I will go with this line. The line of swording this Bloodgust. My opponent can play push on this Bloodgust. That would be a really smart thing to do, because then Prized Amalgam becomes a real threat. Prized Amalgam says that whenever a creature enters the battlefield out of my opponent's part, Flare of Malice. Yeah, that's what I feared. That's what I feared. That's maybe the reason why I was thinking I needed to play a main phase Swords to Plowshare, but that's definitely not the case. My opponent would have Flare of Malice regardless. So Bloodgust goes to the graveyard. As I was saying, Prized Amalgam says that each time my opponent plays a creature from the graveyard, Prized Amalgam gets reanimated. My opponent mills 4 cards. Am I supposed to Force of Negation this? Probably not. I'm supposed to Riddler and then Stifle. My opponent mills another Bloodgust. That's definitely bad for me. So 2 Bloodgusts get reanimated, and I have to contend with those, but that's mostly fine. And then my opponent plays an AO4, that's more than fine to me. So Tarn gets a Thundering Falls. I mean, this matchup gets really good post side with Surgical Extractions. Do I need a Brainstorm? It's a pitch to force, so it's fine enough. So that resolve, Strand, we can fetch for a basic planes. Be conservative of our life total. Riddler. Be sure to go full control so that we can Stifle the Warp trigger at end of turn. And this is a nice blocker for the Amalgams. And my opponent doesn't have the Flare of Malice anymore. We also have another copy of Force of Negation. Next to main, go to the end step, stifle this trigger, and I'll pass the turn to you. You're still underdogs. I guess 7 power on board. Do you have another Flare of Malice? We would lose the game on the spot. Flare of Denial. Wow. Wow, that's something. That's really something. Now we are losing this game. Faithless Looting, discarding Bloodghast and Prize Amalgam with Flare of Malice and Flare of Denial backup. That's really something. Now we need to go Mesa, Phlage on the Prize Amalgam, somehow survive. My opponent needs not to reanimate something else, because we are not defeating this Prize Amalgam in any other case. So I'll pass the turn. End of turn, we'll probably just fetch for an Elegant Parlor and slow roll this Brainstorm. Phlage is coming out of the graveyard next turn. You are reanimating things, I am reanimating things. Cephalid Coliseum probably will discard more Prize Amalgams. No, more Faithless Looting. Am I forcing a Faithless Looting if my opponent goes land looting? Probably not. More Merfolk's Secret Keeper. This one I can Force of Negation it. It's probably fine. It's probably fine. Also because I'm down to 1 card in hand. So Quantum Riddler gets significantly better. So I go down to 5, then I go down to 4. End of turn, fetching an Elegant Parlor. And I'll probably keep land on top. Flooded Strand is good enough. It's good enough to me. So land, Phlage from the graveyard, leaving only Swords to Plowshares and Stifle. Yeah. Just in case we flip Tamiyo. Now we are at 7. It's a comfortable life total. But I mean, Bloodghast will get reanimated along with the Prized Amalgam. So, it's not that easy. And my opponent has a fetch. So my opponent can reanimate this Prized Amalgam and then have a fetch open for the Bloodghast. My opponent doesn't want to do so and fetches straight away main phase just to cast the Faithless Looting. That's more than fine to me. And end of turn we'll get a Meticulous Archive out of the Flooded Strand. Alright, a Frog and another Prized Amalgam. And Bloodghast attack. I'll block 1, go down to 5. Amalgam gets reanimated. Man, if we win game 1 against this deck, against their nuts, it would be something else. I will keep a land on top. Force of Negation seems fine, actually. Force of Negation, what am I forcing? No, it's not that good. Actually, it's not that good. I want a land to draw twice with Riddler. Do I want to play an untapped... First thing first, let's attack and remove the Amalgam. I do understand that I will come out of the graveyard once again next turn if my opponent plays another land, and my opponent will definitely play another land. Steam Vents first to draw 2 cards with Riddler. I don't think there's a way for my opponent to put lethal onto the battlefield, but let's see. Oh, and Prize Amalgam, what? They get reanimated once again? Why so? No, just the one though. Oh, because one takes the other with. So now I need to Brainstorm for Solitude or I'm dead. No, that gets recurred. That gets recurred at the end step, at my opponent's end step, so Faithless Looting is fine. Man, I really need Solitudes. I think just one Solitude will win this game. Let's see if we can find it. That Flare of Malice coupled with Flare of Denial has been really good for my opponent. And my opponent discards another Flare of Denial. Oh, Mana Confluence is lethal. Yes, of course. Bloodghast as aced. Bloodghast as aced. So now my opponent attacks and I need Solitude and a White Pitch in order to win. Everything attacks upon... Why? Why is Prize Amalgam not attacking? That makes no sense. I can go down to 3. My opponent will never have a bolt. I don't think my opponent has bolt. I mean, you're dead. You're just dead, opponent. You're dead on board. I don't even need to brainstorm. Yeah, well, I don't know why my opponent refused to attack for lethal. That made no sense. That made no sense. So my opponent gifts me the first game. That's phenomenal. We want more surgicals. And that's about it. I don't want Wrath of the Skies. I don't want Cast into the Fire. I do want another Phlage. And I have a lot of Exile removal. This has to be a positive matchup. We can even bring in Dig Through Times. Snapcaster Mage is good against those decks because we have Surgicals. So Snapcaster is a 2-mana Surgical, which is also really, really good. We just take away all of the counters. I really don't want to counter anything out of my opponent deck. I just want to exile everything and Surgical everything that's left. And that's it. My opponent will bring in Duresis and Thoughtseizes, but this has to be a good matchup. Like, if I win game 1, granted my opponent misplayed that turn, but if I win game 1, this has to be a good matchup. Leyline of the Void. I don't have any answers to that. Is that true? I don't have any answers. My only answer is Wrath of the Sky for 6. Yeah. So Snapcaster Mage gets significantly worse, and so do Phlage. But I can still have a Phlage resolved thanks to Stifle. Plus I have Surgical in hand, so Dig Through Time get really, really worse now. Wow. Dig Through Time is a dead draw now. Leyline of the Void. I was not expecting that. Of all the ways to attack me, Leyline of the Void was not on my radar. And Psychic Frog. If we don't find the removal for the frog, we die. We lose this game. Phlage the Titan of Fury is way too slow. Man. We also would have surveilled Phlage to the graveyard. That would have been a really big game. So Psychic Frog resolves. Please, Source Plowshares. Plains. The best I can do is Plains. Am I supposed to just cast a Quantum Riddler to draw one more card? I think I do. This is one of the rare occasions where I just cast a Riddler to cycle it on turn 2, because I have another one. Another Surgical Extraction. Yeah, but unfortunately my opponent played the one and only card that puts a damper on my Surgical Extraction plan. So let's see. We're dead cold to Frog. We're definitely dead cold to another Frog. Yeah, Bloodgust. At the very least you can remove the Bloodgust. Frog attacks for 2. I fall down to 17. I think it's Surgical now, the Bloodgust. I mean, it's not getting any better than this. Before my opponent plays a Fetch. And Fetch is really good against Surgical because my opponent can landfall a Fetch. And then if I Surgical the Bloodgust, my opponent can Fetch and get another landfall trigger. Flare of Denial, Flare of Malice, Stitcher Supplier. So we remove the Bloodgust, and we see that my opponent doesn't have a lot to fight me. Except for the frogs. Well, sure. Bloodgusts are removed. You draw another card. But I mean, we are one Source to Plowshares away from success. We are bound to find it. Right? Solitude is not working. Merfolk Secret Keeper, that's more than fine to me. I don't think we are surgical in the Faithless Looting. Secret Keeper is bad because it's a blue pitch to Flare of Denial. That's why it's bad. What am I supposed to do now? If only my opponent had milled another copy of Flare of Denial, and I surgical all of those. So Secret Keeper and the pass. Now we need 2 Source to Plowshares. Yeah, Prismatic Ending is good, but it's a little bit too late. So ending the frog, my opponent pitch casts the Flare of Denial in response. Well, of course. But now we can surgical the other Flare of Denial. If we find another removal for the frog. And we have a Surveil land to try and find that. And at some point in the future we will be hard casting Riddlers to block. So we fall down to 13. If my opponent is smart, my opponent will discard some cards. Yeah, my opponent will definitely discard some cards to the frog. Yeah, Creeping Chill, sure. That's 3 more damages. Am I supposed to surgical now? No. My opponent will first draw, and then we surgical Flare of Denial. So that I don't take 1 more damage to the frog. Stitcher Supplier. That's more than fine to me. That can mill another copy of Creeping Chill, but I am not surgicaling the Creeping Chill to avoid this. Another Faithless Looting, and that's the 3rd frog to the graveyard. So my opponent only has 1 frog left. So Mesa will get fetched away for a Meticulous Archive. No, for a Thundering Falls. I want more blue mana. Meticulous Archive is already on the battlefield. Ephemerate. Ephemerate is a card. Ephemerate is definitely a card with Quantum Riddler. So my turn. Draw Riddler. But now my opponent can Flare of Malice the Riddler. That's the bad part. That's the bad part. But what else am I supposed to do? No, it does resolve. I get 1 more card. So Ephemerate gets rebounded to the exile. And now my opponent realizes the mistake. And now my opponent flares on Malice. Sure. Still not exiling Creeping Chills. And now I think I might have to... No, Surgical is an answer to Flare of Denial. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I go to 8, and then Frog is lethal in 2 turns. I need to accept this. Tamiyo. Tamiyo is a block. Tamiyo is a block for the frog. Huh. That's actually good. Go down to 6 and play Tamiyo. Then next turn we can hardcast the Riddler and have another blocker. We're fighting the good fight. We're 1 Source to Plowshare and or Solitude away from success. We can do this. We can do this. So I'm definitely chomping the frog. I don't need this Tamiyo. I do need to preserve my life total. I'm at 6. And then my opponent passes the turn. Please Flooded Strand. With Flare of Denial mana open, but this is not resolving, my friend. I draw a card, Rebound does nothing. Opponent, done. It stays in the exile zone. Snapcaster Mage is another good chump. So, Surgical Extraction on the Flare of Denial. First in first. To remove my opponent's counter. My opponent can discard Flare of Denial to Psychic Frog. That's definitely what they should be doing. Or my opponent just counters the Surgical. That's definitely good to me, because now Frog cannot become a 6-7. So, Frog is not bigger than Quantum Riddler. This is more than fine to me. Tarn. Fetching for an island. Riddler. Now you need to top deck, my friend. Now you need to top deck. Because this frog is not getting past this Riddler. And I do have a Snapcaster Mage to block next turn. No, I will not block the frog. Frog will jump with this many cards in the graveyard. Faithless Looting, that's all yours, my friend. At some point in the future I can cast Dig Through Time. Man, this Leyline of the Void completely destroyed us. The Psychic Frog, Leyline of the Void combo. Stifle. Stifle does nothing. Flooded Strand to get Elegant Parlor. Can we go to 2? Definitely. We are there to Creeping Chill. Hardcast Creeping Chill regardless. If my opponent goes land, Creeping Chill will just die. And if my opponent goes Faithless Looting, is more than fine. That can definitely resolve. My friend. That can definitely resolve. You don't have Bloodgusts anymore. Another Leyline of the Void and a Mana Confluence. What are you supposed to do? With 3 cards in hand. Oh, now they can discard 3 cards to the frog. Yeah. I can play the Snapcaster Mage and try to go to block. Attempt to chump the frog. And I can. Wow. Riddler survives another day. That's good. That's definitely good to me. And a land. And a fetch. Please, Solitude. Please. Show up. Source Blusher. Not another... How can I go 38 cards down and not find any copy of Solitude or Source Plowshares? Tamiyo. Tamiyo is a good block. Do I attack with the Riddler? Can hardcast Tick Through Time next turn if I find a land, but I will be dead by then. Stifle does not. Stifle, we can stifle Cephalid Coliseum, to be fair. That's definitely what we are supposed to do. I think we go Tamiyo in the pass, or my opponent just concede the game because I'm too slow. I mean, it was thinking opponent, and I definitely was not winning this game. But, I mean, a win is a win. Mythic numbered 188. Maybe not the most competitive of matches. This match against Grixis Reanimator, Grixis Dredge, I must say. But still, a win is a win. I will end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If so, I will bring more timeless content in the future. I will bring back this deck. This is my favorite, is my pet deck. I wanted to get to Mythic number 1 with this deck. Maybe it's a little bit ambitious. Anyways, we only have 2 days left before the end of the season, so it's not an achievable goal for the time being. We'll try again in January and see if luck is on our part. I am grateful to all of you for having watched this video, and see you next time, lucky top deckers.